That's alhamdulillah is going to be in only English, inshallah azza wa jalla, with our brother Salih, was an English teacher in Saudi Arabia, is going to speak about his experience being in Saudi Arabia and likewise giving some advice for those who wish to migrate over there. And it's going to mention his experience. It's going to mention the positive and the negatives at the same time, inshallah azza wa jalla. It's not to bash the country or anything like that, so that a person has an idea when he goes over there. And this is important because I myself at a point in my in life I wanted to make hijrah to Saudi Arabia, and I was told if you learn to get an English certificate, you learn the language and you get the English certificate, you get over there, you study, you teach over there. So alhamdulillah, I took an American brother that lived over there and he was in America, and he advised me, say, "Akhi, to be honest with you, they want native speakers." And that was a great piece of information for me because I'm not native. I came to America when I was a teenager. So that was nice, alhamdulillah. So inshallah azza wa jalla, Salih is going to speak to us with regards to alhamdulillah the ins and outs and that which a person needs to do before going over there, and likewise once you get over there, inshallah. تفضل inshallah azza wa jal. تفضل صالح بارك الله فيكم.
فيك بارك الله. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أما بعد. Firstly, Jazakallah khair for having me again to talk about this topic. This is a topic that is personal to me, important to me. I began practicing Islam. I mean, I was born and raised Muslim my whole life, but the time when I decided to personally practice Islam was 19 years old, and shortly after I practiced Islam, began Islam. Um, I made Hajj, and then so the following year, so I guess I was about 20. I made Hajj, and then after Hajj, I had a layover in Egypt on the way back to America, and I said, you know what? I don't really want to go back to America. I want to stay in a Muslim world, and I want to experience the Muslim world more. So I just got off the plane in Egypt, and I lived in Egypt for a whole year. Um, it was like a Tawakkul experience, and it was a whole year learning. Um, what could I so that I can return to the Muslim world? So I began studying, researching different things, and I found out that teaching English is one of the main ways that a lot of people use to live in Saudi Arabia. Um, in the Middle East in general, but Saudi Arabia in particular. Of course, we all have a passion for Saudi Arabia because of Mecca and Medina. So then I decided to go back to college, come back to America, and then I studied English, and that was my bachelor's degree. My bachelor's degree was in English, and then I went and got a master's degree in adolescent education, and then I did a second master's in educational leadership because I was trying to secure myself to the point where I would never have to come back to America. So then, after I finished my second degree, I went to live in Medina, and I very originally surprised. I was originally surprised about how the way that they treated Muslims who wanted to make hijrah there, because of course there was many other people like myself who studied in the West, and they wanted to leave the West to come live in Saudi Arabia, and they sacrificed a lot in order to do so. So the hiring companies, they knew this, so they took advantage of the Muslims who wanted to come over there to live in Medina, and then they things like pay them low amount of money, don't give them good accommodations, because that's part of the package. Is when you go to live in Saudi Arabia as a worker, you get housing, you get a housing stipend, or so. Medina was one of the way that most other parts of Saudi Arabia do. So I was just a little bit surprised by some of the behavior, and then it disappointed me some actually, and then I left Medina, and then I secured a better position in Riyadh, and I lived in Riyadh for about a good 6 7 years, and learned a lot of things in that time, and I met a lot of people in my travels during that time that made hijrah from the West and said they're never returning. They made hijrah. They're not coming back to America like the U. And they plan on just living in Saudi as as long as possible, really. But rules changed. Once like I was there during the time Abdullah was alive, and then after King Abdullah died, I saw that a lot of things began to change in the country. So when the rules changed, things like taxes, like they didn't have taxes before when I first moved there, and those taxes, you know, and they didn't get to um, hijrah for the remainder of their life. Something that a lot of people they would encourage you, but they tell you all the ins and outs on what it actually means. What are the things you consider before you do it? So this is just some of the general things that I. You have any more?
But the first time when you went to Medina, can you give us some details? Because you mentioned there was some stuff that you were kind of disappointed by. Like, what were those stuffs?
So alhamdulillah, Medina is the property. We don't we have a natural love for Medina as a Muslim. When you go to Medina and you spend some time there, you feel relaxed, you feel peaceful. Who are in charges there that are looking for Westerners to come teach in those institutions? They know this. They know that Muslims love Medina, so they'll shortcut you on the pay. So they'll pay you less than what is actually the going rate, and they'll say, and then if you complain about it, they say, "Hey, you're in Medina." Sometimes they'll do things like won't pay you your paycheck on time. Yeah, like you're supposed to get paid every month, for example. Then one month, the manager forgot to sign the check, as an example. And it was just mm, some of those things, some of those types of behaviors. They act like it's a mistake, but it's not really a mistake. It's something because they're trying to get more money at the end of the day. Um, so yeah, I mean, even my arrival in Medina was a little bit shocking. Um, I I landed, and someone from my job was supposed to come meet me at the airport, but that brother, he didn't show up. So he asked a student from the University of Medina to go pick me up. So alhamdulillah, he was a good brother, West African brother. I think he was Nigerian, and he came and picked me up, and alhamdulillah, we were speaking in Arabic, and I was excited to be in the Muslim world again. And he just dropped me off at a hotel and said, somebody will come meet you. And I just waited in that hotel, and I didn't have a number, I didn't have anyone to contact, I didn't have anything. I was just waiting for them to come meet me. And I had American dollars on me at the time, so I didn't get to transfer any of my money, convert any of my money to reals. So I was so afraid of leaving the hotel to try to go walk to a place where I can convert the money, because I was going to miss them if they came and came to the hotel to see if I was there. So I kind of like waited at the hotel, and I just waited and waited and waited, and then I ended up waiting for 3 days. I ended up waiting for 3 days with no food, no water. So I literally fasted for 3 days, 3 days straight with no food, no water, and I couldn't drink. You can't drink tap water because you'll get sick off of that. Um, so yeah, and then they finally just showed up after 3 days, and I was like, what happened? And they were like, Malish. Basically, Malish is like, sorry. So that was my introduction to the country, and then yeah, that just it was behavior like that just kind of disappointed me, to be honest with you. And it's just because they know that Muslims want to be in Medina, so they'll take advantage of those Muslims' desires to be in Medina by shortcutting, kind of mistreating them.
طيب, so in this right here, Alhamdulillah, obviously we're talking about people who don't fear Allah Azza wa Jal, who are not trying to make it easy for Muslims to live in the land of Islam. Alhamdulillah, that's obvious because Alhamdulillah. So now, so what was your best experiences when you first landed in Medina, seeing the Prophet's masjid and seeing the Muslims and stuff like that?
Well, alhamdulillah, being in Medina was a good experience. My you know after I finally got my secured my job, and then got my location where I was living, I made it to you know Masjid Nabawi every Fajr and Isha. I made sure to make it there every Fajr, Maghrib, and Isha. Those are the three prayers that I was able to make every single day. And alhamdulillah, after between Maghrib and Isha, you have durus going on, you have classes going on, and from so many different shuyukh. What they do is they sit in these chairs, and then they have the students in front of them, and then they speak on these different topics, and they're in different languages. At the time when I was there, they didn't have it in English, but then a few years later, Tahir Wat, he became the first English-speaking imam to to give khutbahs in the haram. So that was a very unique experience, because before that they didn't have anyone to speak in English, but they had, of course, every other language. They had Urdu and you know different languages, but of course I sat in the Arabic durus, and you could ask the sheikh any question. So that was the culture of Medina. The culture of Medina is a knowledge culture, a knowledge based culture. Mecca not doesn't have the same feeling, you know. It's more, when you think of Mecca, it's more ibadah, but Medina was knowledge. So I was appreciative of that experience. I was appreciative of being close to all the students of knowledge. There was people that came from all across the world to go study at the University of Medina, and I was friends with them. So they were that was good, because I had to have a lot of associates that were students of knowledge. And then I even sat in class at the University of Medina. It was open. You could really just go in. And so I sat of the classes, and I got to see how that would have been, because my original intentions on how I wanted to live in the Muslim world was I wanted to study at University of Medina. I actually sent in an application, and I just never heard anything back from them. My second option was to come in as an English teacher, and alhamdulillah, I did that. And but I still always made my intentions to be close to the people of knowledge and the students of knowledge.
Now, so now, what advice do you have for someone that wants to travel from America to Saudi Arabia? What are the skills should they have and the qualifications should they have?
Hmm. Back in the time when I went, English was like the biggest thing. So that's what they were saying. That's the main advice that they were saying is go, become specialized in English, and then become an English teacher. I would say that market is saturated right now, meaning that it's full. They have already a lot of English teachers. Don't don't limit yourself, because that's ultimately what I felt like happened to me. Is I felt like I became limited. I became put in a box where it's like all I could do is teach English, and I don't even like English. I mean, it's my language. It's the language, the only language I know, but it's not something I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate about teaching the language of English. So I felt like I had skills, and I was a little bit disappointed that my other skills was being looked over, and it was like I was just being looked at as an English teacher. So what I would say is that wherever you want to make hijrah to, um, first off, know what you're passionate about, because this is something that you need to make a career for yourself for the remainder of your life. And if you're a young person about to go off to college or already in college, choose something that you can do for free. Choose something that you care about free, because this is what is going to sustain you in the long run, is your passion for the career that you're in. That's what's make that's the thing that's going to be the difference between you being an average person in that career versus being one of the best. And if you're good at whatever you're doing, you're going to be able to find positions. So right now, for example, I still have a working relationship with Saudi Arabia. I go back and forth about every 6 months or so to work on a teacher training project that I'm delivering. I found people that are working in the university um, where I'm working right now, that have engineering backgrounds, mathematic backgrounds, science backgrounds, a wide range of different topics. So whatever you are passionate about, try to be the best at that, try to go far with it, and then you'll be able to find opportunities. There's opportunities in many different sectors in the Middle East in general. So inshallah, Allah will open you.
طيب, so that was your first time going to Saudi. You went to Medina, and then after that you decided to leave Medina and you came back to America in order to apply to go back to Saudi Arabia. Because I do remember, I don't know if you remember or not, when you came back actually before going, you actually stayed with me in my apartment. Do you remember that?
You remember, now that you mention it, yeah, yeah, mashallah, I do
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. So when you came back, because and then it was funny how you couldn't transfer from Medina to go to Riyadh. You had to come back to America first. So tell us about that. And then the second time when you went back, where did you go exactly, and what did you do over there?
So yeah, I'm very glad you mentioned that. That's another very important. When you live in America, you know that if you one day you could be working for McDonald's, and then you can go get hired at Wendy's the next day, and then quit and then go to Wendy's. In, in Saudi Arabia, it's not like that. You have to have sponsorship. So the institution or the company that sponsors you, they're basically another institution. Have um, you have to formally quit, go back to your home country, and then come back to the country again as an invite from the new company. So that's what I had to do. I had to quit the job formally and then uh, be hired from the next job and come back to America and then take a flight back over from the new company's ticket because that's how they do. They pay for your tickets to go back and forth. So every time you leave the country and come back and forth, it's under the company's dime, like they're paying for you. Yeah. So there's a lot of positives. I mean, I started off with talking about some of the shocking things about Medina in the beginning, but there was a lot of positives. You know, that for example is something that's good. You know, getting a lot of free flights from your home country. That was interesting. So and then during that time, I used to be able to travel and go see other countries. You know, because in Saudi Arabia, you're kind of like wedged in the middle of the world. So you have a lot of different other nations, Asian nations, African nations, European nations, if you're interested in that. And I was appreciative of having that opportunity as well. So alhamdulillah.
Now, so the second time, so as far as this the sponsorships, is that still the case up to these days? If a person wants to travel over there, they still gotta get sponsored.
So okay, so now they opened it up. As I told you, after King Abdullah died, the new king came in, and then there's a lot of new rules that came about afterwards. So now they're making things much more open because they have the Saudi 2030 vision. You know, they have a plan to revamp their whole country to remove them off of the dependency of oil and then open up other sectors of society, other businesses. So they're actually encouraging people to become more entrepreneurs. They're encouraging entrepreneurship right now. So if you establish a business and you register your business in Saudi Arabia, you can go back and forth yourself now. You don't have to have anyone sponsor you. So that's something that is a new thing. You know, as long as you have the money and you have the skills to secure work, you can go back and forth, or you can just live in the country as a businessman.
Now, so now give us more details when you went back to Saudi the second time.
hmm So when I went back to Riyadh. I didn't bring my what the situation was. I said, I can't leave to this situation. So I when I went to Riyadh, then I saw that that was a lot more of a secure situation. They gave me housing. I lived in a car, and that's now more suitable for my. So uh, my wife was studying Quran Arabic at a women's program, and I also had my daughter studying with my wife at that same program. I'm at a university, a medical university. It was a university where we used to train the medical that because technology, all of the in all language of the world, right? All of the need to learn English. Even um, Imam University, like I in Medina, is Jamia, Islamic University of Medina. The one in Riyadh, Sheikh University. At Imam University's program English department there. So no, pretty much every university had a sector of English. So yeah, so I was teaching English to the medical professionals, and it was a good experience. Alhamdulillah. I am appreciative of that experience in that time.
نعم. طيب بارك الله فيكم صالح. So basically now something that alhamdulillah we Salafis, alhamdulillah. And now one of the things that even when we open up this channel to show Islam in America to West Africa, people in West Africa, I mentioned to myself, I'm
Mm-hmm.
ashamed to go and record the Salafi masajid in the ghetto. Because when I went
Yeah.
back home, I actually heard people saying that in America you guys got small masajid, they like apartment housing and stuff like that. I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I showed them the nice masajid, but unfortunately, lot of the big masajid, the nice masajid, they're not Salafis. Instead of the
Mm-hmm.
Salafis, alhamdulillah, being busy in trying to actually establish masajid like that because we are upon the truth. You find them unfortunately being busy with, I'm talking about some Salafis, not all of them, being busy with
Mm-hmm.
this person and that person. What masjid can you go to? What masjid you cannot go to, and so on and so forth. So, what do you think Salafis should do in order to improve? And what is it that, in your own opinion, because Alhamdulillah, we know you've been around the Salafis for a long time. What is it that needs to be done to improve and this and to Alhamdulillah? It's hard for me to explain, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. That's a very good question. Okay. First, I think that the Salaf community is unique in the sense that they have this kind of a cult mentality, right? Um, as an outsider, if you just put yourself outside of the Salafi community and you look in, the average person would look at the Salafis and say that they're just a cult. They're just a small group of people that only associate with themselves. They only deal with themselves. Have their own unique way of speaking and thinking, and because of that, I think it limits them. I think it limits them, and it keeps them stuck in these ghettos, right? That's where most of the Salafi communities are in America, and even in the UK. I've been in London, and many of the Salafi masajid are in same condition. It's in ghettos, right? Um, and and it prevents them from building connections with the broader Muslim community. The broader Muslim community are on bigger and better things, dunya wise, at least dunya wise. They're about establishing um, institutions, schools for their kids, universities. Even there's efforts from the other institutions. I mean, other communities where they're trying to establish universities, a Muslim university in America. I think that these are noble efforts. So when you kind of like only deal with your own small community, your vision becomes narrow. You don't see things broadly. You can't envision more possibilities for yourself and your future. And that's why I think that they're kind of stagnant. They remain stagnant, and they're not. Alhamdulillah, the dawah is going on. You can go to any Salafi community and you can learn the traditional books that are going to be very important.
Now, can you can you repeat what you said because your connection, I think, it wasn't being heard. It was kind of like breaking.
In the future, but it's really not. It's just traditional, traditional books going back to from the past, but then there's no forward, outward look thinking. You know, so I think that the reason for that is because they only deal with the small communities. They only deal with each other in their small communities. When you go to a Salafi conference, same people from the same masajid, uh, you know, the same type of topics year in and year out. And yeah, there's just no progress. There's no growth. And the only way you're gonna have growth and progress is if you broaden yourselves and establish connections with the other broader Muslim communities. I mean, when you look outside of the Salafi community, majority of these other communities look at Salafis as a joke. They look at them as like, hey, these people are, they're not going anywhere, and that's why they're remaining in the hood and stuff, and I mean, I'm laughing at it, but it's actually something sad because you want to be with the people of truth. You want to be with the people who are striving to practice Islam in the most pristine way. The way that is most identifiable to what the Prophet ﷺ was upon, and the Sahaba were upon. However, I think that something gets lost in translation when it comes to the Salafi community because they understand principles very, very well, but they don't know how to practically apply it in their lives to develop themselves and their communities. And I feel like that's just an unfortunate thing with the Salafi community. I just think that one start would be just to broaden themselves and to interact more with the broader Muslim community because we are an ummah. At the end of the day, we are an ummah. Yes, there are going to be some people that have different types of interpretations of Islam and different types of practices that goes outside of the Sunnah. We need to advise them and encourage them, but we shouldn't just completely cut them off. And that's what I noticed when we go back to this topic of Saudi is that Salafia is the culture of Saudi, right? It's the minhaj that all of you know pretty much all of Saudi is upon. However, they don't have it as like a cult type of way about them. For example, you can be one of the top. I've seen this myself. You could be one of the top shaykh, and shaykh for Salafiyah, but the cameraman doesn't have a beard. The right hand man who is assisting him with helping him with the classes and stuff is a person who's not Salafi himself. So I noticed that over there they don't have that same mentality. This cliquish, cut somebody off real fast mentality that is being exhibited in the Salafi community, and I don't know where that mentality comes from, but it's something that is preventing us from making progress.
Now, that's a good point that you mentioned. Also, alhamdulillah, I'm sure when the brother mentioned the books and alhamdulillah the books of the Salaf and likewise, you know, Kitab al-Tawheed, Qawaid al-Arba'a, alhamdulillah, that's something that we actually learn in that. Even today we have a dars with Bashir Nelson. He's not speaking against those books, alhamdulillah. He's just saying that, alhamdulillah, you got some Salafis, alhamdulillah, they teach these books, and alhamdulillah, we learn these books from our teachers. But you find them, subhanAllah, being like a cult. To them, they deem all the Salafis not to be Salafis. They, don't go to that machine. Go, and it's crazy. Even I must say this in Philly. That's what I live in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Even the non-Muslims are confused. What do I mean by that? Yawmul Eid, you find this masjid, the different masajid, they do the Eid. Everybody do their own Eid. So
Mm-hmm.
now, subhanAllah, I remember it was mentioned that these non-Muslims, it was actually specifically the people of Germantown. They have the area, they do the Eid at the park. Then you're finding them, subhanAllah, even the people had to come park the vehicle close to Mukbil, for example, close to Mukbil specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
people think that this is all together and this and no, the division is there.
Mm-hmm.
Germans don't deal with Muqbil, you know what I'm saying? So they don't deal with Ahlul Hadith. So subhanAllah, it's like a basic demon what the Salafis to just be deviated, due to personality issue, due to the person wanting to control the da'wah and so on and so forth. So now that's what the brothers are referring to. Otherwise, the books of the Salaf, alhamdulillah, we love them. And likewise, this is something that I myself, I said, the Salafis, alhamdulillah, we were in the dars at Germantown. We in the dars. You call it the adhan outside, gunshot. We have to start the dars. Everybody got to run, and run in to see what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Who want to live with their family, especially if they can afford, live in the ghetto with the, even though you want to live in the close to the Salafi masjid, but you fear for your family. You wouldn't want to do that. You know? So Alhamdulillah, we're talking about now, Alhamdulillah. What is it that Alhamdulillah, you being somebody that's very, very, you are into education, Alhamdulillah. You got what, your two master's degree? Now, may Allah bless you to finish it. So, what is it that you think the Salafis can do? Let's look at in Minnesota. They got Islamic. The Somalis brothers over there, they got an Islamic university over there. Islamic university. You know what I'm saying? So, what is it that you think that the Salafis can do? Alhamdulillah, to improve the communities education wise. Alhamdulillah, Islamic education we're talking about. You know what I'm saying? For those youth that can travel overseas.
Excellent, very good question. So, a person that's a believer of institutions. We live in the West right now, and the thing that has made the West the leaders of the world is because they have the strongest institutions. So we need to be about creating institutions within this country that is going to be for the next generation. Because, as I mentioned, we go to make hijrah to Saudi Arabia. However, they're building those institutions up for their people. They're not building those up for the people that loves Islam and wants to come live in the Muslim world. They're not trying to live in their country for generations. They want you to come build their country up and then go back to your country. So sometimes the brothers may have this good intention of making hijrah, but then they realize at the end of the day that they can't stay. They can't stay forever. There's no way you can own property for example. Um, and in America, this is something that we can do easily. We can own property. We can buy land. We can, when you have this property, you can pass it down to your children for the next generation. So we need to think about things like land ownership. It's a very, very important thing. And then we develop the land. We develop the land with institutions. We develop it first with the masjid. Any community is you start off with a masjid. Then you start off with a K-12 school, preferably all the way up to high school. A lot of these massages they may have something for younger kids, but what about the teenagers? We need something for the teenagers as well. So it should start off with kindergarten up until 12, and then after we've established that, and we have a Quran school, where the students can learn, maybe even dorms where students can stay. to memorize the Quran if they need to travel from farther places. Then after we've established that for some time, um, we can develop that land. We can have on there where people can rent. And then after you've done that, then now you have a sustainable community. You have a community where there's opportunities that are built within in that one community. They don't have to look outside. They can find opportunities within that one locality. We have being in America, we have many other examples of other minorities and what they've done to develop themselves. The Jews are of they're a great example of a group of people that have established themselves in the country as minorities, and they keep their money within their own community. They say that they're $1 that is spent from a Jew, it goes through 21 other Jewish hands before it leaves their community. Imagine that, 21 other hands. But you go to the average Salafi brother in the hood, it leaves the community, it leaves our hand once we spend it. It leaves our community once we spend it because our businesses are not amongst ourselves. So once you've established those things, then you can think on higher levels where now you can think about maybe establishing a university, like you mentioned, like they have in Minnesota. And then with that university, get an education that can now get skills that can be put back into the community again. And there's only two types of things that we need to focus on. We need to focus on either developing products that can be sold to the people, or we need to develop our skills. And those skills are services. So, there's only two types of businesses: products business or service business. So when you go to college, you go to university, you get those skills that can be used into developing better products or creating better services that can be used to serve our community. And then after you have that, now you have something that's going to create generational wealth. And of course, we know the truth knowledge. But then at the same time, you still need to buy a coat when it's cold outside. You need to be able to be warm to go to the place where you're going to seek that knowledge. You still need to have a vehicle that's going to get you from your home to the location where you need to seek that knowledge. So we need to also think about wealth that is going to be generated in our communities. And this, in order to do this, we need to broaden the platform for people to present. And what I mean by this is that, alhamdulillah, a lot of our imams and stuff, they're people that studied overseas, they know the Arabic language, and then they can go into those books, like we mentioned, teach the people. But we have with other skills in the community that have things like, for example, like what I just mentioned, community development skills. There's some people in some of these communities that have the skills of community development. Allow them to have a platform as well to lead the community, help the community to develop themselves, to create ideas and strategies for how people can pull themselves up out of poverty, for example. We need to nurture the talents within our own community and not just limit everything into being Quran, Sunnah, and this is it. This is the end of the no, the part of the Sunnah is practical application. And part of practical application is Rasulullah SAW used to look for the talents of the people that had knowledge of, for example, of how to create a ditch. And the other Sahaba, they didn't have this knowledge because they were Arabs and they didn't have this experience of seeing different types of warfare. So Rasulullah SAW observed this from him. He heard that this was his vision on how they can create this ditch, and then they won that battle because of that particular strategy. There's other examples I can give. So utilize the talents of the people within the community that goes beyond just teaching books, for example.
Now, subhanAllah, and you mentioned the Jews, you find them, they have their own communities in New York, for example. I never seen it in person, but I've seen it, I watched a documentary about it.
Hmm.
SubhanAllah, how they support each other and so on and so forth. The Chinese people, and
Correct.
what are they called? The Amish people.
Correct. Hmm.
SubhanAllah. So, like you mentioned, it'd be nice for the Muslims, alhamdulillah, to the Salafis specifically, to work together and alhamdulillah support each other. And
Hmm.
likewise, not to just be in that bubble. To alhamdulillah, with
Hmm.
Salaf, why are we not extending ourselves to other Muslims to teach them
Hmm.
Salaf, call them to the Sunnah? You got some
Correct.
of these, those in the bubbles, they don't want to go to these masajid. But alhamdulillah, some of the Salafis, some of the Salafi teachers who are balanced, and I really appreciate this about them, they go to this masajid, alhamdulillah, they give them da'wah. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they don't even have to mention the word Salafi. You give them da'wah, you
Hmm.
educate them and you teach them. Alhamdulillah, I think this is beautiful. You know?
Hmm.
Now,
Correct.
Fadda, you want
Yeah.
something?
No, no, no. I agree with you. That's alhamdulillah. The ones who are balanced and have vision, they will go about making those types of efforts, and you don't want to have a name badge like I am I am Muhammad as-Salafi. You don't have to actually mention. If you're a true Salafi, it should be reflective of your behavior, of your character, and it should be something that you can be identified by the way you behave. Oh, this is a person that resembles the people of the Salaf, right? So you don't have to kind of like, make it into a game, and that's how a lot of people, especially in the urban communities, they made Salafia. They made it into like a game, like Bloods versus Crips, Salafis versus Sufis. One is the blood, one is the Crip. It doesn't have to be like that, and it should be more reflective in our character.
Look, Philly has a lot of Salafis,
Hmm.
but the brother that called to Salafiyah, a Pakistani brother, I was told that he never used the word Salafi.
Mm, inshallah. Mashallah.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
So, last two questions,
Mashallah.
inshallah. Tell us before we leave Saudi, when you, alhamdulillah, racism is everywhere. Racism is in America, racism is in Africa, racism everywhere. So, have you
Hmm.
experienced any racism in Saudi, inshallah?
Um, okay, so we have to remember that most of the Muslim world was colonized. Saudi is one of the few locations in the Muslim world that was never colonized. I believe it's Saudi and Iran. It's like one of the only two countries of the Muslim world that has never been colonized in any way. Um, that has had a profound impact on those former colonized countries. And the more traveling that you do, you see the impact that colonization has had on our Muslim nations. Um, One of those effects is that they deem that everything that uh, the West does, and when I mean by the West, I mean specifically the white man. Everything he does is better, you know, and this unfortunately has kind of like polluted a lot of their thinking, um, and it makes them almost just people that far from Islam. And then they would come and they would give this guy, the equivalent of about $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month to come and lead some of their institutions and not even do a good job. He would just be there to steal their money. He would know that, oh, these people love me. They think that I'm the best. And he would take advantage of that. And I kept seeing it happening over and over and over again. And I'm like, subhanallah, you have people like myself and the people that my friends, we're people who minorities in the West, black people or Spanish people or people from different ethnic backgrounds, but they're not white people. And we would come over there, and we would come over there because we want to live in the land of the Muslims, and we want to uh, be a part of that culture. But they would overlook us. They would value us to the same extent that they would the white kafir, and that was very disappointing. Yeah, that was very disappointing to me. Um, but I would say that the racism, it's more classism than racism. And what I mean by that is they look at people based upon the countries you come from. So there's a hierarchy. You be a white American is the top, maybe a white British next, uh, then maybe they'll put like a black person, a black American on the next level, and then a black British at the next level. And then after that they'll just keep going down from the different nations. You know, um, Africans are at one level, Bengalis and Indians and Pakistanis are at another level. You know, uh, so they have this hierarchy based upon the nation you come from, and then once they look at that nation, then they have a hierarchy based upon the races within that nation. You understand what I mean? So at the top of the whole hierarchy, yes, is the white man from. There are Muslims from amongst them, and they are your brothers. But the average one who is not Muslim, they're not your brothers. They don't want best necessarily for your country. So why do you keep being so infatuated with them? And I don't see it changing anytime soon. And it's a little unfortunate to me. So that was a little disappointing to me.
Now, so this is a good point you mentioned because this racism we're talking about it's with the laymen, the common folks. Now we're not talking about the
Hmm.
religious people, those who understand the text of the Quran and the Sunnah, those who know that Alhamdulillah, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The best of you in the sight
Hmm.
of Allah is the one who has the most taqwa. So
Hmm.
that's exactly what we're talking about, right?
Hmm. Oh, of course. I mean, see, okay, going back to the topic of the bubble, right? So, we said Salafis are in this type of bubble. The ulama in Saudi Arabia are in a type of bubble. They're only with they're the the people of knowledge. They associate with other scholars and with the student, and that's their circle. That's the circle, and that's what they engage in on a day-to-day basis is the scholars and the students. They're not going to be really intermixed with the mainstream society. The mainstream society is the ones who are afflicted with this type of thinking where they think everything that comes from America is better. Everything, the people, uh um you know so that's the masses. That's the people you will deal with if you go over as a worker. If you go over as a student of knowledge, you're going to be in your own little bubble. You're going to be in a student of knowledge bubble. If you go to University of Medina, you're going to be in the classes in the university, and then you're going to be in the haram after school. and then that's it. That's going to be the people who you associate with. You're not going to be part of the mainstream larger society. So, in general, the mainstream larger society is never going to be people that are like extremely religious. They're going to be people that are people of the dunya. They're going to be people that are affected by the secularism of the world. So they're going to be impressed by the place where they believe has the most the top of the sect of the dunya, and the place that they perceive as that is America. So this is just the way it is.
Now, so Alhamdulillah, that's a great point that you mentioned. Now with the religious people, Alhamdulillah. The last question is that share with us your experience in being in Africa. Alhamdulillah, I know you've traveled to Africa. Barakallahu fikum.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, so after experiencing Saudi and Egypt, I said I wanted to experience a little bit more of Black Africa, and I want to see if I could possibly sustain myself and make hijrah to a Black African nation. So I spent some time in Gambia. I had some contacts there, and I wanted to see about making hijrah to Gambia. And the time that I was there, I observed that it probably wouldn't be an ideal location for me. And the reason is because of the challenge of making money. As we mentioned earlier, the way to develop a community is through institutions. That's the same way to develop a country or a nation, is to have strong institutions. And one thing that I observed about sub-Saharan African nations is that they don't have strong institutions. And when you don't have strong institutions, you have a lot of corruption. You have to pay bribes in order to get things done, for example. Whereas if you have a strong institution, then you know that there's going to be people that's working there, that you file a paperwork, that paper is going to be filed, and then something is going to be done about what you've filed for, right? But in a lot of sub-Saharan African nations, it's not the same, because they have such weak institutions. There's corruption, and that's how you get things done. You have to do bribery. So I realized that in a lot of these nations where you have to do things like bribery, it's nations that the barakah of Allah won't be there for the long run. I don't believe that they'll be there for the long run, because that corruption is in every part of society, from the top to the bottom. You know, and when you have that type of corruption, you can't rely on having a stable future for yourself and your family. So I realized that unless I had a lot of money and I was able to go over and use that money to like have some type of sustainable business there, I probably won't be able to maintain it for long. And I've met one thing that was interesting when I was there. I met some people that made hijrah back in the 70s, believe it or not, from America. Some people that was there since the 70s, and then they can't go back. There's no way that they can go back to America. They've been over there for too long, and they're too adapted to the culture there, and they won't be able to maintain anything in America. So they're African now. um, and I looked at them, and I saw that there was more failures than successes, unfortunately. Like, for example, one group that I observed, they came over as a very large group, maybe like 20, 30 members. And then now, after a couple decades, they're down to maybe like two or three people that are still striving to maintain over there. So it's a big challenge. And as a summary, as a long story short summary of what I'm trying to say about everything, is that when it comes to hijrah, there are going to be challenges. This is something that there's great rewards for, which and there's also great tests. You know, the tests are equivalent to possibly the rewards you will receive behind making hijrah. So it's something that requires a little bit of study, diligence, and investigation.
Naam. I think Alhamdulillah that was it. Salih, Jazakumullah khairan for your time.
All right, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, I appreciate it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.